So we approached this conversation to discuss what platform interoperability looks like on the user interface level. Usually it happens just on the technical level around data portability and interoperability. So what we found is that what we'd like in some ways is these interfaces to be community central, not platform central necessarily. We still want to enable a diversity of interfaces, but with communities going back and forth between all these different interfaces with very different aesthetics, they have to gain a new literacy, even if there's a single sign-on for every single interface that they're going to, which creates a high barrier to actually the community portability, or how able the community is to transition between these different interfaces. And these different interfaces are useful for different purposes. We don't want one single interface. Depending on the use, depending on the intention, depending on the outputs that the community is looking for, they need to be different interfaces. So what has come up is that there's certain design principles which would be probably important towards developing a cohesive user experience across platforms. One would be orientation. How are people able to orient themselves, users able to orient themselves into where they are in these platforms? Consistency of user experience across the different platforms. And extensibility, so that people can be building various types of things within this. So in terms of agreements, if we were to look at building a community-centered view where the community can transition between different interfaces easily, what we have to look at is a few things. One, adoption of a common taxonomy or terminology. How are we using community? How are we using network? Are we using those terms in the same way? Because right now, on all these platforms, we are most definitely not. Then there would be the adoption of some common design patterns. Fundamentally, just to help the users be able to have some familiarity as they go between. A minimization of brand identity is sort of key to this. So it actually becomes more community branded than platform branded. And then a common membrane crossing mechanism. So how are we actually, do we have something that's a standard for actually when we make these transitions between different interfaces? Because those are the bridges that, if they're consistent throughout, then we can actually get a good, then there's a coherence that can lead to. And so this would be something, it's almost similar, Google put out material design. They've standardized all their design across these different platforms, and although it's not fantastic, they've succeeded because a lot of people are actually able to do that and move between these. So ours, of course, would not be top-down dictated, because that's not how we work among these different networks of people who are building these platforms. So it would be an opt-in. Different platforms would opt in to say, okay, we'll adopt these common taxonomy, the design patterns, we'll minimize our brand identity, we'll build these bridges between the platforms. And then, we'd have to look at governance and how governance would work through, at the start, potentially a very lightweight standards body. But at the beginning, let's prototype this with 2 or 3 or 4 platforms. We even have 3 in the room right now. So this is actually, on a very practical level, there's potential that we could make some inroads into doing this. And then, of course, what we do is we come up with a strategy for tying the backends together. And on the technical level, how we're creating that interoperability as well. But this, as I said, is a new conversation. I've been a part of these interoperability conversations for years. And the approach from the interface level and the user experience or community experience back has not been as much a part of the conversation. So I'm quite excited about this idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.